Alright, so I'm going to show you guys the two different options that you have for your background. Remember that option one is that you can do the cast shadow that you see coming off of the tool that you see on the whiteboard in front of you, or you could take a Jim Dine approach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you both options. If you've kind of already made your decision and you've decided that you're going to do the cast shadow, you can go ahead and kind of follow along with what I'm doing. But if you are still sort of indecisive and can't decide if you're going to do the cast shadow or the Jim Dine background, then you might just want to watch and then wait to make your decision after. So I'm going to start with the cast shadow first, okay? So I've got my pliers here that I used. And so the first thing that I need to do to get this done or get this prepped is I need to erase my guidelines that I still have on my paper. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just take my pink eraser here. I'm just going to give it a good erasing over. Now again, remember I drew my lines very dark so they show up on the video, and as you can see I'm having a hard time getting rid of those, so that is why you don't use dark, heavy lines when you're drawing. You want to be able to erase these when you're finished. So hopefully you guys drew your lines light enough so that they do not show up. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this little blurb about form change and value change, because this is exactly where my cast shadow needs to go. And again, that was something you did not have to write down on your paper. That was just for the video. Okay, so I'm going to take that off. Again, you can see why you don't put a lot of pressure down in your pencil when you draw. Cannot get rid of it. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys a drawing here that's started, okay, with the cast shadow. Now this tool is drawn in a different place on the paper. This is from our old project that we did when the kids had to do multiple drawings and they had to create a composition with it. So this is just one of my demos. You can see I started that cast shadow that I see that's popping up over on the left side. You guys are going to notice, and for most of the tables I think you're going to see that your cast shadow is either going to be just on the left side of your object or just on the right side. But there is like maybe two tables that might see a cast shadow on both sides, the left and the right. So that's something to kind of look at your tool, set up at your table, and make sure, again, it's set up the right way. It's all lined up on your against those tape marks on the table, because if it's not, the cast shadow is going to look different. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, okay, so I'm looking at my board. I'm going to draw where the cast shadow needs to be, and I'm going to do that with a 4H pencil. So I'm going to use the 4H pencil first, okay, just because I'm just drawing the shape in. And what you'll notice is that the shape is sort of an echo of the tool that you're drawing, but it's been skewed and changed and stretched. So with that being said, it does give you a little leeway that even if you draw this sort of, if it's not the right size, if it's not the right proportion, a lot of times you can still make it convincing. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of sketch this out. And again, mine stretches out quite a bit. And I'm drawing this very lightly. Drawing this very lightly. Now again, if you know you're going to do the cast shadow, you can go ahead and start this. But if you're one of those people that thinks that you want to do the Jim Dine background idea, you want to hold off. So I'm just kind of drawing the shape in. Now I do have on my cast shadow, I see a bump that's coming from that zip tie that's holding the tool on there, so I see a cast shadow coming from that. Since I did not include that in my drawing, I'm going to ignore the cast shadow that's coming off of that. So I'm just kind of ignore that. This is a wacky cast shadow. mine's actually kind of big too. Alright, so that's what it looks like on the left side, but I also see it right here too, coming off of this handle. I'm going to draw that in. It goes all the way up here. Again, mine are stretching out pretty far. And then I see it over here too. Alright, so there's my cast shadows drawn in. Now again, I'll kind of darken this up a little bit just so you can see it. But you should be drawing very lightly because again, even though this is the cast shadow has a lot of variation in it. We'll talk about that. But you should be drawing very lightly. I'm going to go through and kind of darken this so it's just easier to see on the video. And again, if I'm not perfect, it still looks like a cast shadow. I'm good. Alright, so there's that. Now, here's the secret with cast shadows. And here's what a lot of people who have never taken an art class would assume. Is that because it's shadow, that I should just go in with a 6B pencil and just fill this whole thing in. That would be the worst thing you could possibly do. Okay? A cast shadow is not just automatically your darkest value, and it's not going to automatically fill in that entire space. A cast shadow is darkest closest to the object it's coming from. Okay? So my cast shadow is going to be darkest right here where it's close to the object, here, here, and here. Okay? And then as that cast shadow stretches out, the value is going to get lighter. So this is going to be a lot like a value scale. So it's going to be darker closer to the object, and it's going to get lighter as it stretches farther away. Now, I'm not going to end like this right here. This edge here is not going to end white, okay, because that's the color of my paper. This is probably going to be like kind of like, and I'm just guessing. I don't know yet until I do this. Maybe a light to medium gray, okay? So because I know that there's going to be no white inside these cast shadows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fill in the space with a layer of 4H. Now, just to make this demo go a little bit quicker, I'm going to work up here on this part, and I'm going to zoom in on it, because if I do those other two parts, it's just going to take too long to show you from beginning to end how that's going to work. So what I'm going to do, and because this is sort of a flat object again, you know, the board is flat, I'm going to start shading in or filling in this area with a layer of 4H. I'm just going to kind of go in a vertical fashion, keeping with the angle of my cast shadow here, so I can make the board look like it's actually flat. So I'm just going to go through and start plugging this in, because again, there's no white that's going to be in this shape. Now, something that you might notice that as you start plugging in these cast shadows, that maybe you lose the edge of your tool. That can sometimes happen. If that does happen, like if you start filling this in and you notice that you cannot see the edge of your tool any longer, that's basically telling you you need more contrast between the value of your tool right there at that edge and the value of your cast shadow. So I've got a nice layer right there, okay? And now what I'm going to do is just continue to kind of build this up. Again, I want it to be lightest here, and it's going to get darker as it gets to the closer to the object. So I'm going to go with my 3B next. Now here's the thing, the inside of my tool right here is super dark. And when I look at it up here on my board, the tool is actually darker than the cast shadow. So that gives me a guideline there. So I don't want my cast shadow to get as dark as the tool right here, because if I do, then I lose the tool. So that kind of helps me give myself some guidelines. So I'm just going to kind of build this up. And I'll be honest with you guys, I find it easier if I turn my paper. I'm going to turn my paper. And now I'm going to start kind of darkening this up as it gets closer to the object. Again, I don't want it to get, for me, that tool should be darker, so I don't want it to get as dark as that. So I've got to make sure that I catch myself before I mess that up. And it may also, too, cause me to go back through and perhaps darken my tool even a little bit more so I don't lose that edge. And I'm just putting it down these layers very lightly so that way I can kind of build it up gradually and I can better read when I need to stop. And so what I'm going to do now, because I am starting to lose my edge right here, that's telling me something. I probably need to go in and kind of darken this, and this is just for me, okay? My tool's different than your tool, but it's telling me something. I need to darken parts of my tool because when I look at my tool in front of me, it is darker than the cast shadow. So I'm going to go in and fix this right up. There. So now this, I can see that better from that. So that's pretty much it. I don't think I need to do too much more to this cast shadow, because again, if I make it any darker right here near the tool, I'm going to lose my tool. I'm going to lose that edge, and I don't want that to happen. So there's that. So I would kind of approach, again, when I would fill this in and this in, I would go back and do sort of the same thing, okay? And you can see this tool right here, much more finished. You can see how it's lighter on the outside and it gets darker as it gets closer to the object, okay? So that's how you'll do the cast shadow, okay? So that's for those of you who want to do that. I'm going to set this off to the side and I'm going to show those of you who are interested in Jim Dine's approach how to do that. Okay, I switch my tools. Alright, so here's my tool drawing. I'm going to zoom out. And I think I'm going to have to zoom out a bit more. So you guys can see the whole paper. I have to lift this up. Now, this step is messy, okay? So I'm just going to say this right now, it's messy. That's why we're not going to be doing this step at our table. I have a table set up in the back of the room for you guys to do this at, that's covered. So that way also, too, you don't get this material all over the table and get other people's projects messy, okay? So I've got the sheet here. Of course, I zoomed out. Now I'm going to zoom back in. And I've got them posted back there near that table just as a reminder, and then I can also, too, even put it up on the board so you guys can see it. So as you guys can see with Jim Dine, you know, for the background, he definitely, having a hard time. There we go. He definitely used like a soft material like charcoal, and this is what you call compressed charcoal. It just comes kind of like in a like a thick stick, and then he also probably used charcoal pencils, which I've got these all located on that back desk. I'm going to show you guys how to use that. Again, it's pretty messy, and all he did was basically kind of, you know, add this media in the background. He didn't add it all throughout. There's areas definitely on these where he's leaving paper show through, so I would recommend doing that. But it's just something that you're going to have to kind of experiment with and play with as you add it onto your project, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do this. First thing, again, I want to erase all of these old guidelines and that little blurb about form change and value change. Again, that should not be on your drawing. And again, hopefully you guys drew your guidelines really nice and light, so that way they're easy to erase away. Mine were not light because I needed them to show up on the video. Okay. So, I've got my materials here. I'm going to see if I can zoom back out. Now, you are not going to be able to use a pink eraser. Once you start putting this material on your paper, you're not going to be able to erase it away. Okay? So just so you know, this is not going to do you any good, nor will the kneaded eraser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this compressed charcoal, and I'm just going to kind of put it on its side. Now, this stuff is super, super soft. And when you use this, it doesn't take much pressure at all to add it to your paper. So I'm going to kind of put this kind of around. The other thing is, too, you do need to be careful about getting it on your actual tool drawing. So you want to take your time. And what I'm going to do, kind of take this and just kind of put it in some areas. You can do kind of diagonals. You can make it heavier down here at the bottom versus the top. He's done that on some of his drawings. And you can kind of just build this up. And kind of darken it down here in the bottom. And here's the fun part you can do with this. Now, if you're one of those kids who's not afraid to get messy, you can take your fingers in here and kind of go in here and kind of blend some of this out. I'm not going to blend it all out because I do kind of like the texture. Of how the charcoal looks on top of just the paper. You can kind of move it around with your fingers. I'm just going to kind of smudge this out and up. And then I can even go back and build it up a little bit more. Again, this stuff is pretty messy. Now, the charcoal pencil, this is what would be nice with charcoal pencil, and you can see my fingers now. You can use the charcoal pencil to get up real close. And I can kind of use it to fill in some of these places that I just couldn't get to with that charcoal stick. So I can kind of sharpen this up. Kind of clean that up. I can also, too, if I want to, I can kind of add lines in the background. In some areas, if I want to. Let's see here. Maybe I'll go this way. Just add a little something, something. And then again, I'll use this pencil, this charcoal pencil, to go in and just kind of sharpen up the edges and get in there nice and close to that tool. And so, there you go. Could leave it like that. Call it a day if I want to. Or I could keep going. totally up to you guys. But again, I'm just going to forewarn you, it's messy. But it is fun. Alright? So, there's my Jim Dine background. Alright, so what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to have these supplies for those of you who want the Jim Dine background. I'm going to have these supplies for you guys over on the back table, and I'm going to call you up one table at a time just because there's not enough room for everybody to go up all at once. So you guys can plug that in, alright? So, that's it.